Hey, welcome back, pet parents. It's Jaron Lukas, and I'm really excited to be here today with Jessica Fisher in a conversation that you are going to love. Jessica is based in the Austin, Texas area, just like we are. You know, Austin people are cool and huge dog lovers. But not only that, Jessica is the founder of the Pet Parenting Reset, which is a platform dedicated to enhancing pet wellness through holistic practices, obviously very like-minded there. And she's also a certified holistic pet health coach and professional canine nutritionist. She's really been working with pet parents to leverage her expertise and guide people in these tough decisions that they have to make with their dogs. And her approach integrates nutrition, positive reinforcement training, and comprehensive wellness strategies to support the overall well-being of your dog. So really excited to talk to her. She is basically one of the go-to dog nutrition experts that you should go to if your dog is having any sort of health issues. Jessica, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to talk to you and to have the opportunity to talk to your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. The first topic I wanted to dive into really is around allergies. You know, all of these dogs have just the craziest allergies. And I guess I wanted to start with just, what are you seeing? What are some of the common allergies right now happening? What are like trends that you're noticing?
Well, one of the things that I really like to point out to people is that there is a difference in an allergy and a sensitivity. And a lot of dogs have numerous sensitivities, especially if they've been on lower quality diets.
Mm.
I hate to say that. I hate to say it that way because it kind of makes people feel bad. And I don't say that to make people feel bad. But in the healthy pet space, we kind of understand that there are higher and lower quality. I mean, just like with everything else, just like with what we buy for ourselves, there are higher and lower quality food items available. But yeah, an allergy is something that you're going to have a severe reaction to. Just like with us, right? We think of if we have an allergy, it's we're going to have, a severe rash, outbreak, possibly worse. It could get really, really bad with an actual allergy. But with a food sensitivity, and sadly, a lot of traditional veterinarians don't recognize food sensitivities. They actually don't believe in them or think that they're real, but they can be very, very real. And they're really just a response to something that we like to call leaky gut, inflammation in the GI tract. And it's because our immune system is seeing something coming through the GI tract that shouldn't be there because there's inflammation. The tight junctions are no longer tight in the intestines, and so food particles and other toxins are getting through. The immune system is saying you're not supposed to be here, and so it's forming these attacks on food particles. And so now our bodies, our dogs' bodies, our cats' bodies are developing sensitivities to these foods. And I'm seeing, I mean, everybody talks about chicken, and I get that. Chicken for sure. There is a lot of chicken, but when people get to me, they have tried so many different food items. They have, without addressing the underlying issue of inflammation and the leaky gut that's going on, or intestinal permeability, as we like to call it. They have tried so many foods that they have developed so many sensitivities to so many various food items. So I'm seeing lamb, beef, pork, spinach, blueberries, like any and everything you could think that would be in a commercial food. And that's not to say every single animal, but I'm seeing a lot with and what I notice more than anything are these, like, we find that, oh my gosh, blueberries are amazing, look at all the antioxidants they have, or spinach is amazing, it's a superfood. So all of these food companies, the big guys, are like, oh, this is a trend, so they're putting trace amounts of whatever that is, blueberry or spinach or whatever it may be. And so people are trying all these foods, and they're just creating additional sensitivities. And no fault of the pet parent. They're trying everything they know to try. And, they're going on a lamb and rice, right? Because that's what a lot of vets say now. Stop feeding chicken, put them on this lamb and rice or whatever. And then, which is also very frustrating. Chicken and lamb are both very warming, but we don't have to get into that.
Oh, we should actually. That is actually interesting stuff that pet parents ask me about all the time. So let's definitely get into that. But yeah, you're right. And I mean, the rice part is also laughable for so many reasons. Like it's just, a not very nutritious carb.
Yeah.
Also tends to be very high in arsenic. Like, right. A lot of people don't know that like rice just has this unique ability to soak up arsenic in the soil. So, rice and lamb is, I agree with you. Definitely, a very simplistic way to start. Probably not the right one either. So, right. Someone comes to you and their dog has, they're scratching. And, one of the hardest parts, at least in my opinion, is even figuring out what is causing the issue. So, where do you start? Like when you're working with a pet parent, where do you even begin to start figuring this out?
It really kind of depends on the dog and the trajectory that I'm like when I'm talking to the pet parent and I'm trying to get a really good understanding. I have a very extensive intake form that people look at and they're like, oh, that's going to take me forever to figure out. But anyway, they get through it. And I kind of look at the trajectory of what this dog has been through and how it started and where it's at now. And one of the most overlooked things is the environment. So while I love to always start with the diet, that's it's the foundation of everything. It doesn't matter how clean or toxic the environment is. It doesn't matter what supplements you're giving. None of this matters if we haven't built a foundation, a solid foundation, which is the nutrition that we're putting into our pets' bodies or our bodies, because that's what's fueling our bodies. That's what's it's giving the energy to our cells to replicate, to clean house, to do all the things that it needs to do. So if we don't have that really solid foundation, so I'm talking about nutrition hands down all the time, 100% on our initial consultations. But for some dogs, it may just be something environmental going on. And so that can be kind of a slippery slope, like which way do we go? So let's just do them both. And so we want to clean up the environment. I want to take, what kind of water are you giving your dog, right? Is it filtered water first and foremost? And we can go even further than that because
that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I want you to add minerals like back to your water because we drink dead water, and that's so we can really get into the weeds with all of this. But yes, I want you to be giving your pets the same filtered water that you're drinking, hopefully non-fluoridated as well. And I want you to switch the chemical cleaners you're using in your house for natural alternatives. I mean, vinegar is an incredible cleaner, and why we're not all using it, I don't know. Essential oils and more natural soap products. If you have candles, plugins, like these are endocrine disruptors that we are forcing our pets to. And I mean, we get to leave our house, most of us, to go to work or to go to the gym or whatever we're doing. We have clothes on our bodies. We don't live on the floor like our pets do. So they are very susceptible to all of the environmental toxins in our home. So we're just talking about things like that. What kind of laundry detergent, hopefully you're not using fabric softener. There's so many things, but we can clean up the environment and talk about not using glyphosate on your lawn. We can talk about those chemical flea and tick preventatives that hopefully we all hate, all the things that we can start to do to clean up our pet's environment while we also clean up their diet and give them this really, really strong foundation for their immune system to start functioning in a more optimal manner. Did that answer your question?
Totally, and more. But that's a really interesting point, bringing up the water. And there's so many levels of that that people could dive into. But one thing you just made me think about is there are at least 3 levels of water. There's like the bottom level where it's like someone takes their tap water, which I'm sure actually probably more than 95% of pet parents do this, that they take tap water out of their sink and then they put it straight in their dog's bowl and feed that. And there are just so many stories. There's a big movement, of people moving away from that. Maybe they're buying a Berkey filter because there's so much lead and other particles in our water. Basically, like the infrastructure in America right now is just really awful. So a lot of people are starting to try to filter their water, but then once it's filtered, you are getting rid of those minerals as you were talking about. And so then remineralizing the water does make quite a lot of sense. So that is a very interesting and easy way for people to start.
It is. And I do it every day. I have filtered water, and it is so easy to add trace minerals to. I fill up my jug in the morning. I add my minerals to it. I grab my dog's bowl and I add minerals and fill her water bottle or her water bowl up with filtered water, and we're good for the day.
Yeah.
It really is so easy. But you can drink all the water you want, but if it's dead water, you're really not hydrating your body. And so I don't want to say that to discourage people from like, well, all I can do is filtered water. Well, great. Please do filtered water. Right. But if we can add some minerals back to it and kind of bring that life back to it, then we can actually hydrate our bodies, which is fabulous.
Absolutely. So you mentioned this warming and cooling meat concept. Let's go into that a little bit. And most people don't know anything about it. So can you just explain very high level to start what that is?
Yeah. So the idea of food energetics is where we talk about cooling foods, warming foods, hot foods. There's a lot more than just that, but that is from a principle from traditional Chinese medicine. And we now have traditional Chinese veterinary medicine where we pretty much apply the same principles to our animals. And so in traditional Chinese medicine, everything has energy and is related in some way, shape, or form to an element. Earth, metal, wood, fire, water are the 5 elements. And so when we look at all of our foods, and this is why, and it can be kind of a controversial thing for me to say, I never say never. There are a lot of foods that I would ideally not want to feed my animals. However, every food has energetic properties. So I never say never to any one food because some sort of illness or disease state, there could be some energetic principles into feeding a food that you otherwise might not feed that species of animal. But for like when we think of food as medicine, kind of a thing. But yeah, so we have foods that are going to be more cooling to the body. We have foods that are going to be more warming to the body. And we also have foods that are going to support chi or life force to the body. We're going to have foods that are going to drain damp or that are going to move phlegm, or there are various things in Chinese medicine that we can use foods to do. Again, we're going all the way back to the idea that let food be thy medicine is probably a butchering of the quote, but food is medicine, and it should be, because that's what nature gives us. And when I say food, I mean herbs and spices and everything that nature gives us is medicine for us and for our pets. So cooling and warming or even hot foods, we tend to think, so, we can look at an animal like a chicken, lamb, goat. Those are really warming proteins. Cool. We have
which would surprise a lot of people, right? Most people would think like beef is warming and chicken is cooling, for, I guess, because it's low fat and white color, but that's not the case, right?
No, it's not the case. It's the energetic properties of the food. So, and beef is really interesting because, and I think a lot of our foods are kind of changing energetically as well, just because of how we, especially here in the US, we are raising animals and, our agriculture for our crops. It has changed so much through industrialization that we are creating a lot more warming and hot energetics in our foods than, say, 100, 200 years ago. They might have been more cooling to the body, but just because of how we are raising our animals and growing our crops, they are becoming more energetically warm. So beef, for example, is a really popular one because we eat so much beef, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way. But
You are a Texan.
yes. So if we look at a cow that is raised how they would naturally live in the wild, they are grass fed, grass finished, they're pastured, they, are not confined. That can be more cooling sometimes to neutral, depending on, again, the life of the animal. But when we look at a cow that was raised in, an industrial agriculture where they're eating a lot of grain, where maybe they're not getting out in the pasture, they're stuck in a pen, or whatever is going on with them. That's me being nice because I don't want to think about how they actually live. And that changes the energetic properties of that meat that you're eating or that your dog is eating, and it can be much more warming because of that.
So when you talk
So
about, and apologies for interrupting you here, but I'm curious, when you talk about the energetic properties of any given meat, what exactly does that mean? And is there a physical form that maybe, I'm sure a lot of people might look at this concept and say that's woo woo. A theory I've had is that there actually is, it's just maybe not really studied by science yet, but there are, like, for instance, we know through dog food formulation that different meats have different levels of vitamins and minerals, especially minerals, which, talking about like remineralizing our dog's water and stuff like that, very important concept there. So I'm curious, when you talk about like an energy in a meat, could you just go into that a little bit, what you think that means, and maybe how that actually tangibly impacts a dog's nutrition?
yeah. So, and it is interesting that you say that science doesn't acknowledge it, because the reality is today's science may not acknowledge it, but even Einstein acknowledged that everything, all matter is energy. So we do have a lot of science of energy. We just choose to ignore it. Or we choose to not believe it. And it's difficult for a lot of people. I get that. If you can't, tangibly put your finger on something, it's hard to believe in it. And I totally get that. But yes, so if we think of how these foods interact with the body, and it can create a warm. So, okay, if you think of eating a hot pepper, like a chili pepper, the like capsaicin that is in a pepper, what does that do to your body? It starts to warm all of the little like nerve endings in your mouth and your tongue, and it's actually going to create heat going all the way through, your through your digestive system. You're going to feel it, and your body is going to start to get warm. That is, and it's, I say a pepper because that's easier for us to like pinpoint. Oh, I know how hot my body gets when I eat spicy food, right? Um, the same thing is happening with other foods we eat, just not to the same degree. So that's the energetic properties of a food. And it can make a big difference in an animal who's in some state of illness or disease, because generally speaking, all disease all disease starts with inflammation in the body, and inflammation is hot. it's heat. If you think of, you get a cut and it gets infected, it gets hot, right? That's heat in the body, and that's inflammation in the body. It's hot. So we don't necessarily want to add energetically warming foods to a body that is already overheated from inflammation. That's
Is
kind
there
of
such a thing as an underheated body?
yes. Really interesting. Actually, there was a dog. I don't want to say, a lot of people know this dog. It was a very, very famous dog, pretty famous dog. And everybody thought that this dog had food sensitivities, that it was, that like she kept going through different foods, trying a rotation and elimination and doing all the things. Everybody thought this dog had, because everything on the outside made it seem like this dog had a leaky gut. So the skin was terrible and constant hot spots, breaking out, red, itchy, inflamed ears. Everybody thought this dog had food sensitivities from leaky gut. Well, turn to energetics and people who work more with the energy of animals, so like animal communicators, energetic workers, that, and I get that not everybody believes in that, and that's okay, started working and this is kind of why it's so important to build a team of people to help you with your pets, and to have different viewpoints from all different types of people, not just a traditional veterinarian or holistic veterinarian, but there's lots of different professions where people have different viewpoints and can help you and your pet. So the animal communicator, the energy worker, said she's freezing. And the pet parent is looking at this dog going, there is no way my dog is freezing. The outside of her looks to be on fire, right? And so it turned out to be something really, really rare with her endocrine system, where her body thought she was in heat, but she had been spayed for a really long time, and it was really rare. I'm not saying this is typical, but started working with a famous canine herbalist, and the herbalist was like, yeah, started adding in some herbs to warm up the body, to warm up the gut and the endocrine system, and the symptoms started like magically going away. It was absolutely crazy, but amazing at the same time. So yes, we can absolutely see, like, it, we can see it in our pets 100%. Like if you have a dog or a cat, and we can take really simple little like online quizzes to assess what our pets' primary elements are and where it is in relation to traditional Chinese medicine, and also see where any like abnormalities might lie energetically through the elements of traditional Chinese medicine. Again, water, fire, earth, metal, wood, those are the elements. And we can look at those and see, okay, wherever your animal lies, a lot of dogs happen to be fire elements. They're really happy, go lucky. Like you think of a Labrador, right? Like that's a fire element dog. We don't necessarily want to feed those dogs warming foods because they're already energetically warm. We don't want to add to that. Otherwise, fire gets out of control and we start seeing abnormalities in fire, like separation anxiety and things like that. So it's even though it can sound really woo-woo to a lot of people, it's the best the Chinese had to explain what was going on with the body thousands of years ago, and it still proves true to this day that everything is energy. Everything has these energetic properties and can make a huge difference in our constitutions.
Yeah. I think I was originally a skeptic of the heating and cooling thing, but so many people who had been right about so many other things, like holistic vets, people like you, had all been, they would mention the heating and cooling thing and they believed in it. And so I started to fact check other things that they would say, like for instance, Dr. Ava Frick is someone who I've gotten to know pretty well, and she would kind of like say all these things about mineral imbalances. And originally I was like, yeah, is that really the thing though? Like, is there science? And so I actually ended up I ended up doing a deep dive where on her, everything she said, I went through, it must have been like 80 to 100 studies. And I ended up finding like, I actually like put together an email at the end of it, and I sent her and I was like, hey, here is like research backup to everything you've been telling me. So like, in case you ever need this, like there actually is like a lot of valid proof into what you've said. And you know, I mean, one of my like most interesting things with her is she's the one who originally taught me that like feeding vitamin C to dogs can cause calcium deficiencies. Won't go into that one right now, but just like little things like that kind of like sound crazy, but then you research them and they turn out to be true. So, you know, I think I definitely became a somewhat of a reformed skeptic, and I think that there has been no research done on this. So like to necessarily confirm it 100%, yeah, we can't really do that. But when we were formulating all of our toppers at Yum Woof, that was a time period about a year ago where I went through about 300 studies. I basically looked at different ingredients, mostly like herbs and stuff like that, that had been purported in Eastern medicine to have health benefits. And then I compared them to NIH studies. I went through every ingredient, compared them to NIH studies, and said, like, were any of these found to have an effect? And the answer was probably a majority of them did have some effect. Some of them, of course, like didn't. You know, it's like they didn't have science back then when they were formulating these things. It's amazing that they figured out what they did. But so like the gross majority of it really did work. So that's what really started for me. That was kind of the turning point where I said, hey, well, all of these people who have been recommending these things also talk a lot about the heating and cooling. And I have my own theories on why like people who are only believe in tangible material science might actually, like, again, no research has been done, but if we were going to do research, actually some research has been done. I'm not sure about the cooling thing, but definitely on all those studies I talked about. So I think, you know, we just need to continue that. Maybe that's what like the Yum Woof Foundation should do someday. But it is very interesting. And yeah, anyone who is listening right now, please, if you find a research study, because I have done no research on this particular topic yet, please post it in the comments because I want to read it. So, you know, we are talking about like heating and cooling. You know, the majority of dogs, I assume, come in with some sort of inflammation. So does that mean that, you know, typically dogs will need a cooling diet?
Again, it kind of depends. You know, every dog is an individual, and where they're at is going to dictate what we can do. So even though I would love to start with food energetics, I can't always start with food energetics if they have a ton of sensitivities. And then we have to take into account what you have access to. What can you actually like feasibly get to feed your dog? Which is really funny because I was speaking with a colleague a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, somebody's asking me about beaver. And I'm like, where would you even get beaver?
Wow.
But apparently you can
Talk
get
about
it.
an alternative protein, beaver.
Yeah. So it's really about what the pet parent can feasibly get their hands on, that they have access to, that's probably affordable as well, right? And so even though I would often like to start with energetics, I usually can't, just because I do see so many clients, animals with a lot of food sensitivities. That's just where we're at, I think, as a society, like where so many of our dogs are at. So that's what most of my clients are dealing with. But yeah, if I have a dog who doesn't necessarily have food sensitivities, I'm working with them for some other reason, then I get to really dig in and be like, let's talk about food energetics and see what we can do there. And of course, it's so much more than just heating and cooling, or, warming proteins and what the vegetables are and all the things. There's so much more than that. And I do think that is important to say too. I know a couple of holistic vets who have recently kind of gotten a little frustrated with how mainstream heating and cooling foods have become. And so everybody's all like on the bandwagon of, oh, I only want to feed cooling proteins, or, oh, I only want to feed warming proteins. And it kind of misses the whole point of Chinese medicine, of yin and yang, right? Like we want probably a lot of something, but not 100% of anything, because we can't, there's no balance in that. Like if you actually look at the yin and yang symbol, right? You've got this all white section, but it has a black dot in it because we can't go 100% in that direction. It defeats the purpose. And also the fact that there's so much more to Chinese medicine than just heating, warming and cooling. And yeah.
What about like physical chi? Like, do you ever deal in any of that?
So in what I have done, I have not so much. And I think that if you work in person with somebody who like who can maybe do acupuncture and other modalities where you're more physical. I do a lot of, I'm an online consultation person, generally speaking, unless you're in the Austin area, and then we can talk. But no, there's a lot that can be done, and that's again why I say like it's really important to build a team of people to help you and your pets, because there are so many different things that we can do, that we can provide our animals. I mean, just like hyperbarics and ozone therapy, acupuncture, like just to name a few that a lot of people don't tend to think of, but I can recommend people seek out those services for their animals.
Are there places yet that offer like ozone therapy and that kind of stuff for dogs?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So O3 Vets, and I think it's o3vets.com. I had him on my podcast not too terribly long ago, but his website has a locator to find veterinarians who are actively using ozone therapy in their practices. That is something that I do feel strongly needs to be done by a trained professional. There are some instances where people can, buy machines to do it at home. I think that's probably financially counterproductive, but yeah, there are definitely some veterinarians out there that are doing it, and I think it's very worthwhile. Oh, go ahead.
I'll tell you a little secret not many people know. I used to take my dog into the infrared sauna with me. Yeah, he seemed actually to like it. I hope he lives longer. I guess we'll find out in about a decade.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that we know, and there's a lot that we still don't know. Electromagnetic therapy is also really wonderful, and something you can do in your home with your pet. And there are a lot of modalities that most pet parents don't know about that can really be beneficial. I mean, just, our pets are dogs, I will say. A lot of them, maybe not all of them. If you live in a big city, they may not get to touch the ground very often, but most of our dogs have the benefit of grounding daily, whereas we don't. And
it is interesting.
That can make big difference too.
Unfortunately, most of them eat Purina, so they're doing all this grounding, and then they eat Purina, and it like more than offsets any good the grounding's doing. But for those of our dogs who are eating good, like natural food, I think about that a lot, actually. I do try to ground. And a cool thing about that is actually the earth has, I'm going to misphrase this a little bit, but the earth has proportionately more electrons than our body does. It's like what ends up happening is like when we do ground, it actually sends electrons into our body. So talking about energy, Electrons are kind of like a base important part of that. So there's also pretty cool science on the grounding stuff too. So within your practice, allergies aside, maybe that's maybe like the most obvious case for like why people should come to you. What is maybe like a surprisingly common health issue that you encounter that you find people should probably speak to someone about?
What popped in my mind first was pancreatitis because it is so misunderstood.
That's so crazy because that's kind of what I was hoping you would say. Do you think it's sometimes I can't tell if like I'm attracting people whose dogs have pancreatitis because we like try to solve difficult situations, or if it's like the fastest growing health issue in dogs today. What do you think about that? And then tell me a little bit about what you found in pancreatitis cases.
Overwhelmingly, what frustrates me more than anything about pancreatitis is the misinformation, where a lot of our medical professionals are just blanket blaming fat. That is so frustrating to me, especially when we in the healthy pet space understand that it isn't about the fat. It's about cooked fats that are high heat processed. It's about cooked fats in combination with starchy carbohydrates. It's about overloading the pancreas with these things that our dogs are not, they evolutionarily are not equipped to deal with. And then we just blame fats in general. Like, no, I don't want my dog to eat a ton of cooked fats. I certainly don't want my dog to eat rancid fats. And my dog has absolutely no use for starchy carbohydrates. And the pancreas is just yelling and screaming. But because so often it happens around a barbecue at 4th of July or, the turkey scraps at Thanksgiving, that people are just like, see, you shouldn't be giving that human food to your pet, which drives me absolutely bonkers, as if our dog's food comes from another planet somewhere. I don't know. Right. But it doesn't have as much to do with fat if we're feeding whole food fat in a fashion that, and I know you know so much more about fat than I do, so I don't want to pretend to know more than you do about fats. But if we're feeding real whole foods that are, and I hate to say the word healthy fats because Billy will kill me. He hates the word healthy fats, but healthy fats.
You're safe. You're in a safe place here. You can say healthy fats.
I can say healthy fats. Fats from nature is what I mean when I say healthy fats, that we haven't denatured. That's what overloads the pancreas. And it didn't really click with me until I listened to Dr. Steve Marsden talk about it. And he's like, just think about, like, how would these dogs be eating in the wild? Of course they're eating fat. Like, that's the best source of fuel for our bodies is fat. So why we're demonizing fat is just bonkers, but that's what our traditional vet med has decided to blame. And so they're like, here, feed 70% carbs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eat these cheap ingredients. Your dog likes it. It's interesting you say that because first off, you're just reminding me of the wolf diet, which was and it remains 54% protein, 45% fat, and 1% carbs. And that carb number can be up to 5%, but we're talking pretty minimal carbs either way. Mm-hmm. And most of that is actually obtained from like the organs when canines are eating their prey in the wild. So 45% of their diet's fat though. So man, it does kind of grind my gears as well when I hear people start to talk about like dogs can't have a high fat diet. There might be definitely schnauzers and like some small dogs definitely seem to have like a genetic disposition for it. So like clearly we have like bred
Yeah.
dogs, and that can like cause health issues. But you know, people also overlook the fact that like what types of fats, and I think that's something you were alluding to. What types of fats? Is it a seed oil? You know, that is going to have a very different kind of like pathway in the body than like an animal fat. You know, also you're mentioning cooked fats, which are heavily oxidized. And, you know, I think that might be the worst part of it because it has all the free radicals,
Yeah.
but there, who knows like what else, you know, cooking some of these oils is doing as well. And maybe that's leading to pancreatitis. So it is very interesting when you think about, you know, like, yeah, if we go back to just like the biological origins of what was fat in a dog's diet, you know, it was like raw fat. So that is a very interesting point you make. What, do you have any theories on like what starches might do to, like trigger pancreatitis?
Well, the digestive enzymes that our dogs produce aren't optimal for breaking down starchy carbohydrates. So, like grains and legumes and beans and things like that. That's not what you're going to find, generally speaking, an animal in the wild eating. Certainly not a bean, right? Like they're not soaking them overnight and to get them to a point where they can eat. Like that's not happening. Again, like to go back to the beginning of the conversation, I don't ever want like never say never, because if we are taking into account Chinese medicine, everything has energetic properties, blah, 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 all the things. So I'm not saying never, 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 but generally speaking, no, I don't want to see any dog eating grains and legumes and beans. And like, that's just not natural for their evolutionarily in their diet. And the different enzymes that they produce to break down foods just aren't great at breaking those down. Certainly digestion, I think it depends on who you listen to. There are some people that are stating that digestion actually starts with the olfactory senses because that produces saliva. If you smell something, blah, but generally speaking, we say digestion begins in the mouth because that's where the saliva is produced. That's where the breakdown of the food actually starts to happen. So, and all the digestive enzymes throughout the body, throughout the GI tract, and primarily are going to be produced through the pancreas. And it's just their bodies aren't equipped to break those types of foods down.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never seen a study on this done, but it wouldn't surprise me, and you're just kind of making me think this offhand now, that perhaps dogs, I forget whether or not they have 100% of the same digestive enzymes as humans. That I don't remember. I know they're pretty similar, but they might be in very different ratios. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And that would be very interesting. And that actually might explain why dogs can eat grains, but maybe they, don't do it effectively.
Right. Yeah. I don't know the comparison to humans.
That would be
either,
an interesting study for someone watching to do.
Yeah, that would be very, very interesting for sure.
I got to start a community of scientific researchers. That's a goal. I actually have made early steps into that, but that would be very cool because there's just so much cool new stuff happening within everything from obviously AI, and then there's protein folding and just all of this heavy computational things where I was talking to Jen Schisler, who's a really, really top, maybe the top dermatologist for dogs in the country. Very good, very smart. And one of the things she's been sending me studies on lately is all about cross-reactivity of proteins, which is a very new field. But I was having this conversation with her, and I was making my usual non-joke, but I kind of say in jest the weirdest protein, the weirdest allergy that I have ever seen and will always remain the weirdest one for me is so many dogs have carrot allergies. If you're watching, your dog probably doesn't have a carrot allergy, by the way. It's still very rare, but so many dogs I spoke to enough pet parents whose dogs had them that I was like, we have to create a recipe for them. So I was talking to her about this, and she was like, well, it kind of makes sense to me because like some of the, even if it has very few proteins in it, like some of the protein structures can be chemically very similar to like lamb or you name it. So it is interesting when I would love to see some of the research that starts to happen, just like looking at the structure of some of these proteins. And I think we're going to learn a lot. And what it's all going to bring this back here, what I think we're going to find out is that Eastern medicine was right.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And it's not to say that like Western medicine doesn't have its place, but for me should not be the first place we look for. I mean, it's great for diagnostics, but for actually healing our bodies, for me, it's not the first place to look.
Yeah, absolutely. Medicines, they just, they seem to have all these side effects.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Get on Facebook. You'll see all the side effects. There's a group for all of them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Jessica, this has been really interesting. I think we got into some like kind of forward-thinking topics here. Before we head off, how can people reach you and also, you know, kind of like who should come schedule a call with you?
Ooh, you know, if you're struggling, if you're going to the vet and you're doing everything the vet says and you're not seeing progress, if you're not seeing changes in your animal, or even if you think you're seeing changes but they're temporary, Apoquel, then please reach out to me. I'd love to be able to help you and your pets. Or, you know, even if it's not me, there are quite a few now holistic pet health coaches that are certified, that are out there, that are able to help you. There are a lot of canine nutritionists, more and more canine nutritionists that are being certified every week, which is amazing because again, food is the foundation of health. And yeah, so I would love for you guys to listen to my podcast, The Pet Parenting Reset. You're already listening to a podcast.
Everyone needs to check that out. Where can they find your podcast, Jessica?
It is on every podcast app, Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart, all the places. Wherever you are listening to your podcast, the Pet Parenting Reset is there. And if you happen to be not on a podcast app, you can also get it on YouTube and my website, which is just thepetparentingreset.com.
Go check that out, everyone. Thanks so much for listening, joining us today, talking about dogs, dog nutrition. Again, yeah, I think we got into some really forward-thinking stuff here. So if there's anything you want us to cover in the future, any questions you have, leave them in the comments. I'm Jaron Lukas on Instagram. And until next time, may your dog be healthy.